What's going on, everybody? This is Luca, the co-host of the Movie Pope podcast, and today we're continuing with our 4 Film Lovers series with Volume 3, and this time we'll be chatting with 4 spectacular individuals. We'll be kicking off with Rebecca Kirsh, who talks about her interest in post-production editing and visual effects, and then we'll talk with professional stuntman Eddie Portoghese, and then we'll talk with P. Michael Hayes, based out of Austin, Texas. And finally, we'll round off our discussion with Alex Patten, who went from a baseball player to acting. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Volume 3 of 4 Film Lovers. And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we have an old friend here, Rebecca Kirsh. She was actually an old friend of mine back from my film school days here at UNC Greensboro, and she's been kind enough to join us to regale us with tales of filmmaking. And in case you were wondering, yes, the Greek festival was amazing. We did get loaded up on lamb and I believe it's souvlaki. And yes, we all fell into a food coma afterwards. So good times ahead, and you will be seeing footage of our adventures to the Yasu Greek Festival within a few weeks. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we are on Spotify now. And his moviness is very, very happy to be on Spotify, and we have many, 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 many episodes to come. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe here, and follow us on Spotify, and we will be on future platforms in the next few months, if I can make the time, and if his moviness will actually get off his ass to do anything. But Rebecca, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Like I said, I was at the Greek festival yesterday. I got loaded up on kebabs and gyros, so I'm still walking it off. Not doing too well on that front, but you know, who's counting? So So Becca, I mean, you and I go way back because we first met at UNC Greensboro, and we actually met at a meeting at the local college TV station.
Yeah.
And I remember I remember you telling me that you're, I guess either you're, is it appropriate to call it your specialty is post production?
It is. Yes.
Okay, so why don't you dive in and just give us a basic idea of who you are, how you got bitten by the film bug, and what led you to decide that filmmaking is the career instead of the number of other options out there.
So when I was a kid, I used to want to be an actress, and so I started making movies and starring in them just so that I would get a chance to act. And back in the VHS days, I would edit my movies using 2 VCRs. So I mean, no computers or anything.
So it's really, really old school.
Yeah, very, 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 very old school. I don't even know how I did it.
To our younger viewers out there, back in the day, people used to use these thing called VHS tapes, and they had to use these giant clunky machines called VHS machines, or VHS, or whatever it is now, and you had to wind and rewind, and it was very, very complicated. So I recommend you look up those documentaries on how they made films back then, because it is very, very complicated, and this is why we love modern Adobe so much. Not that we're being promoted by them. Just saying. Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to throw that in.
No, it's a good point. Yeah, makes me feel old, but yeah. So that's how I used to do it, and then I was introduced to the mini DV tape camcorder, and then I learned iMovie, and that got me started editing. So I was editing, I was about 10 years old, if you can imagine that. And yeah, so it's been a while. And then I started taking movie making classes when I was a kid, because we found a program in Durham called Movie Makers, and they teach kids how to make movies. That's exactly how it sounds.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I did a lot of acting as a kid. But when I started college, I still did a little acting, but I was, focused on behind the scenes, and took an editing class with the old Final Cut Pro 7, which is obsolete now.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, ever since I graduated, I've done a lot of other production work. A lot of videography. Did quite a bit of PA work when I was finished with school, just to kind of work my way up,
Yeah.
But a couple of years after I graduated, I landed a full-time editing role at an agency. And then after that, I started working at Camco Manufacturing in Greensboro, and I was there for 6 years. I was videographer and editor, so we did a lot of commercial work, and then after 6 years, I started freelance editing, and so that's what I'm doing currently. I have my own post-production business, Kirsh Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still acting from time to time. I picked that back up actually during COVID because I needed that kind of creative outlet,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So so why did you feel post-production was right for you? What made you gravitate towards it?
Um, I think just because I'm an introvert, I'm somebody who likes quiet, and I like focusing on the storytelling aspect, I think, more than anything, because when you're on set, which I've been done many times. It is very chaotic, and
Yeah.
it's really not about, in my opinion, it's really not about the storytelling. It is about shooting it, getting the scene done, and I just feel like with editing, it's your time to build the story, and it's not about the chaos. That's just a personal opinion. I know plenty of people who hate editing, and they might argue with me about that, but
Right, right. I know I know in the previous interviews that I've done, I know some people have mentioned that, you know, sometimes it can be a bit hectic just just being on the production set because you sometimes you have to deal with actors who can be a bit demanding. Sometimes they may back out of a project at the last minute, and that can be a bit hectic. So in a way there's a sort of, I guess, comfort level when it comes to post-production because you've pretty much gone through the whole chaos thing, and now you're just there putting all the pieces together, you know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I completed a short film, premiered about a year ago. I wrote it. Actually, wrote it in college. My writing for the screen class. Yeah, you remember that one?
Oh yeah.
And, yeah, and I decided to produce it 10 years later. A friend of mine kind of talked me into it. I mean, he encouraged me. He really liked the script, and he encouraged me to actually make it. And
Yeah.
and I was in a position where I could do it. I could produce it. It was really challenging though, because of all the planning that went into it, and it was really just me alone. I did get a very good assistant director to take some of the load off my back, but he kind of came on board later. So, primarily it was all on me, and and I had a very low budget, so I couldn't afford to compensate people what they were actually worth.
Yeah.
So
I know what you mean on that.
yeah. So I had, people drop out at the last minute, and it was just constantly, just trying to fill the spaces. It was just, it was a very chaotic time. And also I was the lead actress, and I was the co-director. So I was wearing so many different hats, and it was kind of like I couldn't just focus on the creative part.
Right.
It was
Because
all
you're busy managing the entire thing.
yeah.
So I want to ask you about that, because like I said, I've spoken with a lot of filmmakers and film producers about the production process, and the one and the one common theme that keeps coming up is that even for a short film, you do need a lot of financial capital. Was that something that you kind of had to wrestle with, had to struggle with? Did you have to look for backers, or was it all self-financed?
So I paid completely out of pocket, and I did have a GoFundMe thing, but but that was just kind of, I thought of that as a way of paying myself back. I did not even break even. But I did have some very generous donors. I had that fundraiser up even during the premiere. And any little bit helps. But yeah, I had the funds. But because nobody was paying me, nobody was investing. It was kind of like, I'll pay as I go, whatever I have to pay. But I knew that a lot of my crew would have to be willing to think of this as a group effort kind of project, what they call sweat equity. And so I think everybody who ended up joining my crew and staying there, they were all very dedicated to this project, and they were in it for the experience. They liked that this was a romantic comedy. It's not just, I think a lot of people maybe were sticking to one genre, a drama or a horror, and it's done a lot, and myself included. And so this was a different kind of experience for people, and they were very, very loyal crew, and very generous with their time. And I appreciated everybody who was on board, but it was just hard to get everyone together, at the last minute. But it all worked out, at the end of the day. It was just, it was tough. But yeah, financially, it was all just kind of pay as I go.
Did the thought ever occur to maybe try to seek out investors, or was that the furthest from your mind during that period?
I really hadn't thought about it, because I hadn't ever done such a huge project before. And this was in the middle of COVID, and the economy had taken people out of their jobs, and Hollywood was dead, because nobody could work. And,
it was the whole lockdown thing.
So it hadn't even occurred to me, just not having taken something like this on before. I had done productions in the past, but I had people with me, had other producers kind of holding my hand.
Right.
But yeah.
So this was your first solo effort, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
Okay.
And I did have a co-director, but she was there really just for on set for me and the other actors because I did not want to direct myself. I was very I felt very strongly about that. I needed somebody um to take charge of that aspect. So I was there to approve the shots, approve my performance. I'd have to watch playback. But I mean, yeah, it was really nice to have that kind of backup.
Right. Right.
But
So this leads me into another question. So when you said that the crew is very dedicated, and you said that this was done through sweat equity. So basically, these are guys because it sounds like they're working pro bono, really.
yeah, I mean, I made sure I fed everybody. I paid for their, gas. And I paid the DP because he was traveling from Atlanta. So, and I knew that, and he was bringing his own gear. And so, I'm trying to think, and the people who were working with me in post-production, the, sound and music, that was different. I compensated them because they were, performing a very long-term service for me. So
Right.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, in terms of the, the production assistants and grips and yeah, it was pro bono with gas and food comp pretty much.
So it sounds like most of the crew were locals. They were from the area, except for that DP, right?
Right.
Gotcha. So so presumably that meant that they had to keep production within the localized area as well, right?
Yeah, we actually we filmed part of it at UNCG.
Okay.
And the thing is, this film, I mean, it was about my life during college, and so we were filming where it actually took place.
So you actually went to Mary Faust.
What? I don't think we got Mary Faust in the shot, but but we were one of the scenes took place right next to the music building, the School of Music.
Okay.
It's a very pretty location, so that's why I chose that. And we got a lot of shots, just around campus. But have a lot of footage that got cut from the final film, but
Gotcha.
but I'm sure if you saw it, you would recognize it.
Oh yeah. So I definitely want to move on to how you get the actors because because I've learned that actors and this is not to knock on them because I definitely don't feel that way about them at all. I respect them for what they do, but actors are to me are kind of have this mercenary mentality. It's like they'll only do it for payment, and if typically, and most of the time, if you try to get them to do it for free, it's going to take a lot of convincing. And you did mention that there were situations where actors kind of dropped out at the last minute. Can you walk me through the process of how you how you cast these actors and how you had to deal with them during this production?
Yeah, well, look, this might be hard to believe, but the casting was the smoothest part of the pre-production process.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I found that I can't speak for Atlanta or LA, the bigger production areas like that, but I think in North Carolina, because this is not if you want to make it as an actor, this is not the place to do it.
Right.
I think that most people will do it for the experience, for the joy of acting, just getting to be creative. At least that's how I feel about it as an actor. I just want to act. And I held auditions with on Backstage, and I had casting notices on Facebook, and Um, and I just found the right people, and they were very enthusiastic about playing the parts, and they took it very seriously. And well, one of the parts is very easy to cast. He's now my boyfriend, and I live with him. So, but he played one of my love interests, and but I so that kind of just worked out. But yeah, I mean, that's always been my experience though with working with actors. They've never had a problem doing it for free or gas money or never been an issue. But yeah, I can't speak for other people. There might be some people, I know if they're going through a talent agent, that might be a little bit different because they're paying their agent to find them work, and I could understand if the project is pro bono. It's kind of like, what am I financially gaining from this? I can understand it from that angle, but if it's just kind of like a local film production,
yeah,
yeah. And I'm very, I'm very upfront, whenever I make, casting calls. I'm like, hey, this is non-paid.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, another thing too is because it's because if they're union members too. I mean, there's like a certain set fee that that you're supposed to pay them.
Yeah, and with SAG, I mean, it has to be a SAG film. So
yeah,
in which this was not.
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely a good point.
So I remember back in school, you had this huge collection of Hitchcock films, but you were also very much a Friends girl. Coming out of the 90s, it's rare to meet any woman who did not have an obsession with Friends, and I know my mother had an obsession with Friends because I remember, I think it was like either 2001 or 2002. I was asleep and I got out of bed to go to the bathroom. I saw the living room light was on. I walked in and my mother was watching Friends, and as soon as she saw me, she was like, "Shit!" and she turned the TV off. Like, I didn't want you to know this at all. Were you? I was wondering if maybe you could talk about what influences you as a filmmaker, because I definitely want to say that Hitchcock and Friends were like the two big things that kind of inform your aesthetic, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I wanted to see if maybe you can sort of flesh that out.
Well, I definitely do have a Psycho poster on my wall. So yeah, and in Friends posters. Yeah, I'm definitely a fangirl of both of those things. Yeah, in terms of kind of what's inspired me. I mean, I watched horror movies when I was a kid. Probably shouldn't have, but my dad got me into them essentially. And that's kind of what got me into filmmaking. I made horror movies when I was like 9 or 10 or something, which is really hard to believe. But I don't know. I don't know if it's because of all the visuals. I think because I hear this a lot from other filmmakers that they got into filmmaking, from watching horror movies. I think it's probably something to do with the aesthetics, all this, the blood and guts and jump scares. And I don't know, there's so much going on. I don't know, that's just maybe a hunch, but
yeah.
Yeah. So, but in terms of Friends, I mean, that's more, I wouldn't say that had really anything to do with my filmmaking. It's just more of entertainment for me. But I did go to LA a couple months ago to the Warner Brothers studio tour, and I went to the Central Perk set and sat on the couch.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. There's so much Friends stuff on that on that lot.
Now, did they have to drag you out off that set because you're just clinging onto the couch like, I'm never leaving?
No, I mean, they had a long line of people waiting to get their picture taken there, so it was kind of okay, snap, all right, next. And but I stood there for a few minutes just sort of taking it all in, like, oh my God, I just sat on the couch. And it was a lot of fun, just going to Warner Brothers and seeing, all the, not just Friends, but props and costumes from, classic movies. It was a really, really cool experience. I'd say I enjoyed that the most, when I was in LA, seeing all the, behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was gonna say too, because usually when you talk to filmmakers and you ask them, well, what's your aesthetic, they really can't give you an answer, because it's like it's just something that happens organically. Do you feel like there's like a certain motif or a certain, I guess, like a certain way of doing movies that kind of seeps into your work that you're
Well,
aware of?
I guess, I mean, I did a lot of dark subject matter, really up until my most recent film, Love and Less, which was, like, as I mentioned before, a romantic comedy. But yeah, I mean, everything else I did was, had at least some kind of a dramatic element. And I think, that's just a lot of, I think it's just like an emotional outlet, really. And when I write, I mean, I try to keep things very realistic, conversational. I did do kind of a sort of a somewhat supernatural film, or had a supernatural element to it. But I tried to, base it on the truth. So, because I know a lot of writers, or, new writers, especially in class, they would, they were very ambitious with their writing.
Oh yeah.
A lot of action heavy scripts. The dialogue wasn't really believable, and I don't know. And you see that a lot, though, I think.
I remember I remember seeing a few student films back in school, and it kind of made you and I scratch our heads, and we're like, well, what the hell is this? Because you start off with a very ambitious idea, and then when you try to translate it and into actual filmmaking, it actually kind of just falls apart all over the place. So so you did mention earlier that you worked as a videographer for a company for 6 years, and then you decided to go freelance. What made you decide, what, I'd rather be my own boss? Because that would sound like a sweet gig to to be a videographer at a company,
Yeah. I mean, I was there for a very long time, and I had learned a lot. But it kind of reached a point where I felt like there wasn't really anywhere further I could go, because I kind of helped build the video department that it is today. And I think it's nice to be the least experienced person when you're, on a set, because you're learning, and it's a
Right.
place where you can grow. And I think when you reach a point where you know more than your own, boss. And I mean, and my boss was very sweet guy, and he hired me because I, had the experience that he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But, there just wasn't anywhere I could go. There's no real room for growth. After 6 years.
So you felt like you hit your limit at that point.
Yeah. And, I just wanted to kind of expand my horizons and, do things my own way and pick the projects that I would work on. And, I took a risk there, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't been the easiest. But I think, ultimately I made the right decision there to just do what I needed to do, for growth purposes.
Gotcha. And I can totally understand that, because you get to a point where you realize, what, it's sweet getting a paycheck, every week. It's sweet having to do what I love to do, but there's just that one little thing that keeps gnawing away at you, and you just, it finally gets, pretty prominent, where you're like, I don't know if I can keep this up, So I definitely feel where you're coming from. So so what are you doing at the moment with your production company? Because it's a fairly recent entity, right?
Yeah. Yep. I've been freelancing for a year now, so yeah, it is still kind of new. I'm still new to that kind of that way of thinking, yeah. So I've been working on some narratives. That company I told you about, Movie Makers, where I learned how to make movies. Right now I am working for them, freelancing for them. So that's been what I've been doing the past couple months. And now I've picked up a few other gigs. I probably shouldn't say too much about those, but yeah, things seem to be kind of slowly building back up, because this summer, I will say, was tough. I think that's apparently what happens with most freelancers. It's always summer is always slow, because businesses just, they aren't as active. They're all on vacation, and
Right.
and then once September hits, it's like boom, back in business.
Right. That's what I always thought was fascinating, was the fact that you would think that there would be something to do in the summertime, but apparently not. Everything just picks up as soon as September 1st hits.
Yeah.
So a recurring question that I've been asking a lot of my guests lately: do you find yourself assuming more of a businessman mentality as a filmmaker these days, or are you more, or are you still more creative than you are business, especially given that you're now working for yourself, and you're trying to run run your own production company?
That's a really good question. I would say that I wind up doing a lot of things on the business side. It's not that I really want to, it's that I have to make contracts. I have to make invoices. I have to send out cold emails. I have to advertise. It's just part of the territory. I would like to spend more time just being creative. But I think 50% of the job is the business side of it.
Right.
Yeah. And I am, looking for other opportunities, whether that's um, part-time work or full-time and freelancing, nights, weekends. I'm kind of open to all possibilities at this point,
Yeah.
kind of go where the wind blows me, so to speak,
Yeah. But the reason why I bring that up is because you and I know very well that when we were in school, um, and I've been saying this for the past episode. So all of our viewers watching, I know it. I know you hear it over and over again, but it's a very, very important point. When we were in school, the business aspect was seldom emphasized. We were mainly focusing on the technical side of filmmaking, but I've learned over the past few months that that filmmaking, if not half, it most of it is composed of the business aspect. Do you feel that this was something you had to learn through experience, or did you have to ask people on how to do this? How did you navigate the business aspect of filmmaking?
um I think I just kind of figured it out as I went along. I'm a very organized person, so that's never been an issue. It's just I definitely made a lot of mistakes when I was younger, when I was first freelancing. I didn't understand things like talking about the payment before you do the project.
All right.
I yeah, I just didn't get that you have to establish everything.
Yeah.
It's not like ordering a bunch of stuff at a restaurant and here's your bill. I just kind of I guess I used to assume that that's just how it was done, but no. Kind of just through learning from mistakes and these days, I'm pretty strict about contracts, unless it's somebody I've worked with for 20 years or something. But you know, contracts are important. Invoicing, and I learned to do that kind of stuff just over the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, nobody really taught me. I certainly did not know any of this in school. I feel like they really should. I mean, they should have a business class as one of those gen eds or something. It'd be very
or at least
helpful.
or at least kind of incorporate it into it like they do with media law,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I feel like that would maybe be more useful than media law.
Speaking of which, I had Monica Trombley on last week, and we did talk about the legal aspect of filmmaking, and I knew that I knew that there was that the law played a role in how you made a film, but the way she broke it down, it was like, oh my God, like there's just, I mean, you got to be very careful, or else someone could easily sue your balls to the wall. You did mention that that it was a learning curve for you when it came to all these contracts. Did you have to do it by yourself, or did you find yourself consulting a lawyer, or did you seek legal advice whenever you're doing these productions, or what?
No, I'm not really. I just found a contract template and filled in the blanks. And I keep my contracts, most of them anyway, pretty informal. Just, I mean, as long as they, I have their signature and agree to these terms, because a lot of my clients are, solo. They're they're doing what I'm doing, but they're outsourcing. So they're not, huge companies where you have to go through like a long legal process or anything. It's just, it's just kind of like making it official,
Gotcha. So it isn't it's nothing complicated to where you would need to have everything written in legalese, right?
Right. I mean, some contracts are like that, but that's usually something that's provided to me. If somebody wants to write an official legal contract and have me sign it, I am perfectly fine with that. you know. But yeah, mostly, if it's just one person I'm working with, it's nothing like that. So
what I like to do on this podcast is have my guests give some sort of advice to young filmmakers just who are just starting out, because I figured, with a podcast like this, I definitely at least wanted to be informative. Do you have any particular advice or any particular lesson that you feel would be would be important for for a young filmmaker starting out, or a film student who's thinking about getting their feet wet in the film industry?
Yeah, I would say networking is really important. You know, ask your friends, if they know anybody at all in the business who could possibly help, and maybe they'll know somebody who knows somebody. And start off with PA work. That's what I did. I just, I had to really work my way up, some people would say, start working for free, but I have to say, if you're trying to make a living, don't do that. If you're editing or something, don't do that for free unless it's an internship or something. But still, yeah, you have to work your way up and network like crazy. That's really the best advice I can give. I mean, I'm doing that every day. I'm always networking, and it's just, you never know what's going to happen, especially as a freelancer. I never know. Like, every day is going to be different.
Right. Because the next person you meet could take you to the next level.
Right, exactly.
So are you working on any personal projects, or are there any other short films that are in the pipeline that you want to plug?
No, honestly, after I finished Love and Lust, I've just been focusing on my business. I really haven't had time to write anything. It's just been in a very different headspace. And something was kind of in the works for a while, but just is more of a money thing, really.
Right.
I think that next time I make something, I'm gonna have a producer invest in it, and so it won't be out of pocket again.
Right.
But if I don't write anything, then
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So so we're definitely coming to the end of the episode, but before we sign off, is there a favorite movie or TV show that that you're just bursting to recommend to people?
Wow, because there are so many good ones out there. I'm actually in the middle of watching Better Call Saul, and that's really good. Yeah. Breaking Bad's really good. The Leftovers, that's not as well known as those two. I do recommend The Leftovers. If you're into horror, I recommend the Mike Flanagan series. The Haunting of Hill House is my favorite of his collection. But I'd save that for Halloween. You know, I'm trying to think. So there's so many good shows out there. But yeah, those are the few that came to mind, I guess.
Gotcha. Well, Becca, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast, and I definitely want to bring you back for future episodes. Just because I feel like there's a lot that you can offer in terms of advice, and also a lot of a lot of takes on different subject matters. Because I definitely want to pick your brain when it comes to understanding millennial humor, because that is something that I'm trying to figure out myself, and I figure that'd be a pretty good topic. So, I definitely foresee you coming back on for future episodes.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Excellent. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. If you definitely enjoyed watching us, definitely like, comment, subscribe. And as I mentioned earlier, check us out on Spotify. We have majority of our episodes uploaded on there. And Becca, if you have any links to your social media or website, we'll definitely put it down in the description below. But for the Movie Pope, thank you so much for watching, and take it easy. Ciao. Hello, and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today I've got a great guest here. I've got Eddie Portoghese, who is a professional stuntman based out of Denver, Colorado. And if you've recently seen the movie The Fall Guy, there's going to be a lot of questions about what stunt people do. But before we dive in and Eddie regales us with stories from the backlot, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and if you can, please share this video with everybody that you know, because we are trying to grow the channel and our podcast, and any love that we can get would be greatly appreciated. Eddie, my man, how are you doing on this fine Friday afternoon, or evening, I should say, on my end?
I'm well. Thank you, Luke. I appreciate you having me on this podcast. And yeah, all is good.
Excellent. And now I've got to say, when I first heard from you, when you first sent that email, I was really, really excited, because I'm really wanted to talk to someone who worked as a stuntman, but we were kind of playing cat and mouse, trying to figure out like a good time, because you always had gigs going on, and I felt like, oh, like we've got to figure out a good day and time. So this was kind of a Hail Mary pass, because I was like, because originally I was thinking, oh, it's my day off, nothing's going to happen on a Friday. But,
Right.
But fortunately you did agree to come on. So I'm so glad to have you on here. But Eddie, why don't you go ahead and get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and how you decided that being a stunt guy was the best career move in your life.
So, it all started when I was a kid, watching James Bond movies and seeing all that action take place, and not really understanding film at that time. And my father, who was a big fan of James Bond films, we used to watch them together.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, I want to be a spy. These guys do some great stuff. And he explained to me, like, this is a movie. Spy life isn't quite like that.
Yeah.
Those are stunt people doing these action in these gigs. And I was like, oh, okay, I want to be a stuntman. And roughly around the same time, a movie called Hooper came out, starring Burt Reynolds, which was directed by Hal Needham, a very famous stuntman turned director. Went on to do Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run, all these Burt Reynolds action films. And when I saw Hooper, and I saw them, that was the Fall Guy of my generation. So I'll say that. So that movie, and a lot of people my age became stunt people because of Hooper. And I feel like with the Fall Guy, there's going to be this generation of young boys and girls who are going to say, I want to do that too. And that's going to be their catalyst to to becoming a stunt person in the film industry. So that's sort of how it got started. And then I didn't, again, this was going back quite a few years. There wasn't, I'm going to age myself here, but there wasn't the internet to pull from. So there wasn't a lot of information on how to become a stunt person. And I was on the East Coast. So all I really knew was like I thought all the films were made in Los Angeles, California, Hollywood. That's right. And at the time, frankly, most of movies were made there. We didn't have these places like Atlanta and the Carolinas and even in like Albuquerque, New Mexico, that are kind of blowing up in terms of filmmaking. So at the age of 19, I moved to California, and I was lucky enough to fall in with a group of people that were training new stunt people, or training young people to become stunt persons. So that's how I got my training. Spent a little bit of time in California, not long enough to really get in out there. And then I ended up moving to Chicago years later, and that's where I got my SAG card, kind of cut my teeth with some stunt people in a group called Midwest Stunts. And then eventually I moved to Colorado, and that's where I've been, doing the business out of Denver, Colorado now for, a good time now.
So you mentioned something really, really intriguing. You said that when you moved to California, you trained to be a stunt person. Now, this just goes to show just how ignorant I am. I always just assume, that if you want to be a stunt person, you just went up to the production office, said, "Hey, I'd like to get a job as a stunt person. What do I do?" And they tell you, "Well, you stand over here, and then someone's gonna like pretend shoot you or throw something at you, and you just take it, and then we yell cut, and that's it." But you mentioned that you had training. Was there were there any sort of qualifications you needed in order to kind of get in, or did they just take anybody?
Well, the ad that I answered in the paper, was significant to me in my life. So I'll never forget the words, but it said, "Athletically inclined people wanted for stunt training." I was always an athlete. I played football, baseball, tons of sports growing up, and so I was athletic. I had agility, and I thought, that fits that fits me. So that's how I got started. But I'll tell you, Luca, like I would say most of the jobs in the film business don't work the way normal jobs work. Like you just go in and you apply, and you get a gig. It's really tricky getting into this business. And I know we're going to discuss a little bit of that later, because that was one of the things we had said we'll discuss. So I won't get into it now, but yeah, I was kind of under the same understanding. Like, I'm out in California, I got my training now. I'm just waiting for someone to like recognize me. And, it just didn't work out that way for obvious reasons. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up moving out of California. But down the road, eventually I figured out the business a little bit more, and learned how to get into it, and then utilize the training that I had. So
what exactly goes into the training to become a stunt person?
That's a great question. Lots, and it just depends on where you get your training and what the unit is kind of offering.
Is there like a standard? I guess the best way to ask is there like a sort of like standard curriculum when it comes to training to be a stunt person?
Not really, and there's no like governing body over this or anything like that. So there probably can be some real bad trainings out there, where people are just trying to exploit people for money and say, "Hey, I can train you to be a stunt person," and they're not really teaching you good techniques or anything like that. The guys that I ran into were trying to build a stunt team. That was their idea. So they had some guys on staff that were experienced, and then they were getting new people in to train them and build kind of a group. And so there were actually 3 classes in this. It's now a defunct unit called the United Stunt Academy. And I was in the 2nd class, and then I went on to help train the 3rd class after having graduated from the academy. And so we went through. I was taught theatrical stage fighting. So really not more for stage than for film. But of course, over time, I've learned how to utilize those skills in a film scenario. But I learned things like body burns and high falls and a lot of car stuff. Not so much driving, but more like car hits, dismounts, jumping out of a moving vehicle, transfers going from one vehicle to another. We did, of course, fighting with some weapons like knives and pick handles. And that was, we learned how to rappel too. That was part of our training as well, rappelling. And that was it. But then a lot of that stuff that you see in movies, you kind of learn on the job, because it's not like, I mean, you can practice stuff, of course, and we do, we train, but you don't want to be practicing too many, wrecks and falls all the time, because it's a wear and tear on your body. So like things like a stair fall, I learned some of the tricks about how to do a stair fall safely and how to protect yourself. But it's not necessarily something I rehearse a lot,
So this leads me to another question, because I love following football. Like, I will go, I will wake up every morning and just check Google Sports to see what's going on. And every day, like, you read these stories about, so and so who was a wide receiver for this team, they retire at the age of 26.
Mm-hmm.
So at least so you probably know where I'm going with this. Is there a certain shelf life? Like, are there like prime years for you to be a stunt person before you kind of have to pack it in?
Well, the nice thing about the stunt world is you can sort of graduate to stunt coordinator, where you're now coordinating the stunts, not necessarily doing them. Now, again, I think in the business, there's a lot of guys that are older that stay in the business because they can do a lot of stunt coordination, and they might still put themselves out there in some stunts. A lot of guys graduate into driving and they become wheelmen because, that's a lot. I wouldn't say it's safer, right? If you saw the Fall Guy and the guy does a 8.5 cannon roll, right? But being a driver is a lot less taxing on your body than doing a stair fall,
Right.
Or, falling to the ground, getting kicked in the chest, whatever the fight entails. So in terms of ages, I think, I'm going to stay in this thing as long as my body holds up and as long as I can. But you do want to kind of get to a point where you're doing more coordinating than the actual stunts to save your body. So.
Yeah. And in my mind, I'm thinking, when you're in your 20s, obviously, you're not as concerned. But as you get older, like say, like once you reach your mid to late 30s, that's when you kind of have to start thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing too many of these stunts myself anymore. Maybe I should kind of graduate towards being a coordinator instead. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about what a stunt coordinator does, and what are the I guess the best way to phrase it is, how many years of stunt work would you need in order to be qualified to be a stunt coordinator?
Well, there's specific numbers in SAG, in the SAG-AFTRA union, that you're supposed to have so many hours to actually be a stunt coordinator. I think it was like 500 set hours or something like that.
Okay, so it's sort of like when if you're trying to become a member as an actor, right? Like you have to meet the certain number of hours in productions. Okay.
Well, it's different in acting. In acting, you don't need a certain amount, but to be a coordinator, because now you're coordinating stunts, they kind of require you to have more hours on big production stuff like that.
Okay.
Again, there's not necessarily a governing body besides the union that would kind of prevent that from happening. So like out here in Denver, it's a pretty small, film community. I get asked to do, stunt coordinator jobs because there's very few people in town that can do it. And so the stunt coordinator's job is to take a look at the script, break it down for stunts per se, and then collaborate with the director on how to make these scenes possible, whether it's training an actor to do it, or hiring a stunt double, or tweaking it to make it, viable. So sometimes, the scripts are written and, the scene is, kind of crazy. It's like, well, we don't, you don't have the budget to do this. You know what I mean? But if the money's there, then anything could be done, as we know from like movies like Mission Impossible series and Fall Guy and Indiana Jones and all those action-packed films.
Right.
But the coordinator's job is to basically read the script, figure out the stunts, figure out how they're going to translate into camera, how we're going to make them look real and authentic and keep people safe in the process as well.
Now, you did mention something interesting because you said that when you look over a script, you're checking to see if it's something that's viable, and you mentioned whether it's something that's within budget that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
How would the budget inform what kind of stunts you can and can't do?
Well, just say, for example, if somebody writes a script that they want to, they want to have 2 cars crash.
Okay.
If you're going to crash 2 cars, you got to buy 2 cars. So that's, whatever a cheap car costs. But, again, a lot of this stuff out here is very low budget. And so, and again, in Hollywood, anything goes because they can afford it all. They want to wreck 10 cars, 20 cars. It doesn't matter. They can do that.
Yeah.
In this small market, it's a little different. I try to get all the stunts in the script done. When I say viable, just sometimes I think people that have scripts, they just don't realize the cost of what, how, what these things are what the expense is going to be for them,
Mm-hmm.
And so even for example, like a body burn, if somebody wants a body burn on camera, that's an expensive stunt. Most stunt people aren't going to touch it for, for less than a couple of grand. And some of the budgets out here are kind of low. They're again, in this community, they're ultra low budgets. We're talking about, under 100,000 by a long shot. And so, those things add up quickly. So for the most part, I look at the script and I say, okay, you want this, we can make this happen. But we're going to need to do this and we're going to need to do that in terms of like getting the right people in place, or we're going to have to do some rehearsals and training for this if you want this actor to do this action.
So even if a script has something as simple as a man jumps out of a 3rd-story window, I mean that's something you would still dissect and just say
yeah. Let me say this, Luca. There are no simple stunts. No matter if anyone ever says, "Oh, this is easy," you just have to, trip and fall to the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything can turn into a nightmare or an injury situation. So, there's no easy stunts. So sometimes people don't realize what stunts are, and they think, oh, this is just 2 people tackling each other and going to the ground. That's all stunt work.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can train an actor to do a fight, that's something we can do. But technical stuff, I'm not going to train an actor how to do a high fall, or train an actor how to do a body burn. These are technical stunts that need training. And so that's where it gets tricky. And that's where I bring in, I say it's not viable, unless you bring in a stunt double. And then now you're talking about your budget has just grown because now you gotta pay the stunt double and you got to do some training and rehearsal. So I think a lot of people don't know, how the business works in that regard.
Yeah, and I have to admit that's something that I was never totally aware of because I just took for granted that when you see something happen on screen, it looks pretty easy. But obviously, if you're the person doing it, it's not it's not going to be as simple as as say like jumping from one I guess from one step to another, really.
Yeah. Nothing's easy. Everything takes rehearsal time, practice time, and ability. The ability to do it and the timing to do it. And then you have cameras rolling, so you got to hit your mark, and so these things are all tricky. Nothing per se is easy. And so when you see these big budget movies like Fall Guy, I mean, it's amazing what they can do. Things are different now because we do have the ability to do green screen stuff. So a lot of stuff you'll see can be done in a studio somewhere, as opposed to live action, where back in the days of Hal Needham, that stuff was all done in camera, in live action. without any kind of, green screen ability. And, so kind of like you saw in the movie towards the end there. This is a little bit of a spoiler for people who haven't seen it yet, but like the two aliens are running next to the car, right? And the car is moving and he shoots one and the guy falls on a crash pad, so that sort of scenario, that just wasn't a thing back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, really, until the advent of like sort of, green screen CGI stuff came into effect, right?
Yeah, that's like late 90s, early 2000s, right?
Yeah, right. So even in the 80s, all those movies were done with practical stunts.
So another thing I want to ask you, because because whenever I watch these interviews, the interviewer will say, "Well, I can't believe you did your own stunts in that movie." Um, so I just have to ask, how do stunt people feel about actors who prefer to do their own stunts? Is there like a sort of respect for that commitment, or is there a part of them that says, well, that's just taking the job that I could have done?
Well, whenever you're making a film and an action sequence, there's a bit of both. Okay, because everybody wants to believe that the actor is doing the stuff. So there's always close-ups and things like that. So the nowadays, take away Tom Cruise because he's literally doing that stuff, right?
Yeah,
But in a lot of other cases, and even in some of his cases too, there'll be a stunt double for him. So it'll be him doing it like on the close-ups and stuff, and then on some of the wider shots, they'll bring in the stunt double. And so
gotcha.
a lot of times the actor has to do something physical. That's just part of the movie magic, right? So I don't have a problem with that at all. They're not taking a job away from me because the job is still there. You might have to do the tough fall, but they're going to do the other stuff. It's funny
Gotcha.
in that movie Hooper, Adam West, who was famously known for playing Batman,
Yeah.
the lead actor in the movie that Burt Reynolds is playing the stuntman doubling him. And
Hmm.
they show a shot of him like just kind of jumping like this, and then they go, cut, all right, bring on the stuntman, and so it's just like he's just does something leading up to this like fall. And so that's sort of a funny take on it. But nowadays, I think for realism, you see a lot of actors doing physical stuff. And like let's take the Matrix, right?
Hmm.
Even the Wick series now, Keanu Reeves goes through months and months of training to do that stuff. Does he have a stunt double? Probably for some of the stuff that he's not capable of doing. But for most of the action, a la Tom Cruise, they're doing it themselves. So
Yeah, and I was gonna say with the John Wick films, I mean, there's a lot of intensity, about it. Just because of the fact that John Wick is someone who's, or I should say Keanu Reeves, I should say, he's the kind of person who kind of thrives on being, the man, giving out the punches as opposed to having someone else do it for him. Um, now I was gonna say, wasn't the director of the John Wick movies? Wasn't he a stunt guy himself, or
yeah,
stunt coordinator?
um, I think so. I think he went into directing with those movies,
Okay.
and I think the same thing with the Fall Guy. That gentleman went, was a stunt person and now he created his own production company, 87 North. And so now they're making movies and directing. So, and again,
Gotcha.
that's kind of a natural progression, right? To move up in any world, in the corporate world, but certainly in the film world, you go from kind of one step to the other. And you see a lot of actors, right? A la Clint Eastwood, who become directors and great directors, right?
Yeah, and I really do appreciate the fact that that you're getting these different perspectives from people who come from these different backgrounds, because they can look at things a certain way that, say, a writer wouldn't be able to look at, right? Because say for instance, if I was sitting there, writing a script, I mean, I could have all these crazy ideas, like a man's got to jump from a burning van off a bridge onto a boat, and then jump from the boat and swim, to safety to escape this explosion. Obviously, obviously in my mind, I'm thinking, man, that kicks ass. But then if if someone like you reads it, you're gonna be like, this makes absolutely no sense, man. Like, what have
Well,
you been smoking?
yeah, yes and no, but the beauty of film, right, is everything can be cut up into sequences. So
That's true. That's true.
the van going off the bridge is one stunt, and then him swimming, is another gag. So like all of it is potentially possible. As crazy as that may seem, but I mean, if you watch, some of these action films today, I mean, take the last Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning. I don't know if you got to see it at all, but
I did. Yeah, I did.
yeah, like that train sequence, towards the end, it's just like it's incredible, but how much of that was probably shot in a studio, you know, I don't know the details, but I would say probably part of it was shot in a studio where it's, again, not to take away from that, those stunts in the studio, they're not necessarily any safer. I don't want to make that point. What I'm saying is that there's more time and there's more calculation that can go into it, rather than trying to do everything practical on set.
So, I do want to shift gears a little bit because
Well, it's still practical either way. Sorry.
yeah, no,
We're not talking like CGI. We're not talking animation. We're talking just something that can be done in a studio and something that can be done live, right?
right,
In action. So
right, but
so
as
the
long as they
enormity of it can be smaller. So like take
Yeah.
for example a high fall. Okay.
yeah,
You can do a wide shot of a guy or girl doing a high fall from 2, 3, 4, 10 stories, right? And that's all real. And then you can go into a studio and have your actor do a 5-foot fall into a bag, just to catch that glimpse of the actor falling, and then you cut to that wide, right? That's how movies are made, right?
yeah,
Close-ups, wides, mediums. So all that stuff is movie magic, is what they call it, right? But
yeah, exactly.
the risk of that, the risk of that fall in the studio 5 feet is still a risk, but it's not as great as somebody coming out of 80-story building into an airbag, right? So
Yeah, absolutely,
but
absolutely.
it all works together, right? You piece it together.
So, so I see it on your hat. You run a company called Action
Yes.
Press Stunts.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you got that started?
Yeah, the beginning of Action Press Stunts was actually just Action Press, and I created a newsletter. This is when I was in Chicago,
Mhm.
and I was just trying to kind of connect people from different parts of the Midwest, stunt people from different parts of the Midwest, and I did a newsletter called Action Press, and I would reach out to people in Minnesota. I got in touch with a guy in Ohio, and then the people in Chicago as well, and would just write articles about what they were doing and just kind of keeping up to date on things that were happening. And again, this was quite some time ago, so there wasn't really, there was no internet per se to do like a blog or anything like that. I mean,
I remember those days. I remember those days, man.
This would have been in the mid 90s, so there probably was some beginning of the internet, but I certainly wasn't savvy enough to be running a blog. I guess the internet really wasn't a thing until later than that. So
Yeah, yeah, because back then you needed some serious money to be able to afford all that stuff.
yeah, there was some minor things in place, right, like emails and stuff. But in terms of, so I would like print out this newsletter, paste and cut, kind of create it, this document, and then like mail it around town. And so that's how Action Press started, and that became my first company. And then I was, always still trying to get into the stunt business. So then I just kept it, and that this has forever been now my logo and my company.
So you're based out of Denver, is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. So what's the so when it comes to doing stunt work, how is it? And you mentioned this earlier. What is it like doing stunt work in a small market as compared to a large market like New York or LA?
Yeah, I mean, everything. It's quite different here. I mean, most of it is run by budget. So that's what I was saying. Like small budget movies. Like a lot of stuff I do is in the to be honest with you, is in like the $25,000 range, up to 5 million. So I did a movie a couple of years ago. The budget was 5 million. So that's pretty big for this market, to be honest with you. But most of the stuff we run into is pretty small. And so one of the differences is that, there isn't a big budget for doubling actors and having these grandiose stunts. So most of the stuff that happens in town here is usually fight scenes. I did do a body burn in town years ago, so that was something, but that was, again, that was in the budget, so they had it. So in a small market, a lot of the times what I'm doing is I'm training actors how to do fights and things like that. So like to give you an example, when we first tried to connect, I had just wrapped the movie The Mountain with Dustin Chitty, who you got to speak with
Yeah.
a number of podcasts ago, I guess now, right? Or whenever that was. So Dustin had a script and he, contacted me to be the stunt coordinator. And one of the scenes was a person getting drowned in a lake. And I had said to Dustin, I said, well, do you have this person cast? He said, no. And I said, well, if you're open to it, I would be willing to play that part because it's easier for me to do that stunt than to train someone how to do it, right? So that's how it worked out. And so I coordinated other action in that film, and then I played the part of the character, Ray, getting drowned in a lake with Dustin as the actor. So, he and I did rehearsals together with the camera operator to kind of get that synced in.
So so is that typical, or is that more of like an exception?
In this town, it's a little bit more typical because if I can get myself in there to do something, I will, because again, it just saves me the time and energy of having to train someone to do it. But sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes all the roles are cast, and I just have to train actors, or on occasion, get a stunt double. But I'll be honest with you, Luca, there's not a whole lot of stunt people in town. There really aren't that many people in town. And as you may know, this is not a big film town.
No.
We don't get big budget films here. We don't have a major studio here. We don't have a sound stage. There might be little ones in town, but nothing major. When you go into cities like Los Angeles and Atlanta and Chicago, New York, of course, they have places to make films. Sound stages and whatnot. So
another thing I want to ask you too was that is that you're currently operating out of Denver, and you've worked in LA and Chicago. Have you ever considered about moving to to larger markets like in Atlanta or Wilmington, for instance?
Years ago, I probably would have considered that when I was younger, but I didn't. I kind of stuck it out here. And now at this point in my career, I'm kind of happy in my little niche here in Denver. And like you said, I do have some contacts in other states, and so occasionally I'll get called to work in those states, and those are generally bigger budget projects, which is nice for me because I usually don't coordinate out of state. I usually just go and do some stunts. So It's kind of nice, but the pay is better and all that stuff.
So if someone were to come up to you today and they said, "Hey, Eddie, I just saw The Fall Guy. I'm really, really keen on getting my foot in the door in the film industry, and I'm really, really interested in being being a stunt person. What do I need to do? What would be your advice? Like how would they get started?"
Well, I would definitely want them to get some kind of training, some kind of professional training from someone who really can teach them the right techniques and learn, how to do stuff correctly for camera, for film. And then, getting back to your point, I would say you really have to move to a city that has a lot of production going on. So a place like Atlanta or the Carolinas, like you mentioned, Wilmington, of course, Los Angeles, New York, possibly, just somewhere else and again, there's not that many places. Chicago is a pretty big production hub. But a place like Denver or smaller cities. I mean, Albuquerque is a good place to go to, actually. So that's not too far away. But I would suggest getting some training and then getting out to a place where you could potentially get work. But again, the tricky thing about stunts is you can't just go up to someone and be like, "Hey, I've got some training. Could you hire me to be a stunt person?" It's not how it works. You are hired by the stunt coordinator. The stunt coordinator will call the stunt team and say, "Hey, I need this person for this," or they either know your expertise or they know your ability or they know your stature, and they'll be like, "Oh, I need you to double this person. You're the right size for them."
All right.
So that's how it works. So my suggestion to people who want to get into the film business, I don't care what department you want to get into, just get in any way you can. And what I mean by that is do extra work, do background work, try to be a stand-in, do PA work, do those jobs that you can get hired with minimal experience. And yeah, they're low-level jobs. I've done them, but those jobs got me on sets, and being on a set enabled me to meet people and then say, "Hey, I'm doing this, but my real intention is to be a stunt person, and I have training, and I have to." So this is my advice to young people: get in the business any way you can, and it may not be what you want to do in your heart of hearts, but get in there, get in the door, get to know people, and then let your intentions be known. My real love is to do this.
And it's interesting that you said that, because I did an interview with Keith. He works with crafts and services on film sets, and he pretty much said the same thing. He was like, what, most people who get started in craft services don't stay in craft services. They usually end up going into a different field, like either being a DP or a gaffer or something like that. So it's so interesting that what you're saying pretty much aligns with what he told me a few episodes ago. You mentioned too that that the big thing is getting to know the stunt coordinator, so they know who to contact if they need someone to do this and that. Do you is there like a registry or like a list that you put your name on so they know who to call, or what?
Yes and no. There are some things out there. I don't really hold too much credence on them, because this business is all about relationships. And there's an old adage in the film business that says you get your next job from your current job.
Right.
On set, you're working with people, and then I just got this film coming up. Would you like to work on it? Next week when we're wrapped here. Sure, great. So you build relationships with people, and that's my experience in all the jobs that I had, whether it was a PA or a stunt person. I got jobs based on the relationship I had with people, and continue to have with people, because especially in the stunt part, the stunt business, it's a very trustworthy business. So you're not going to call on somebody that you don't know to come and do something with you that's potentially, life-threatening or dangerous, right? So
Yeah, you kind of have to earn it.
yeah,
Earn
yeah,
your stripes, as it were.
right. And that's just sort of the way the business is. There's a lot of nepotism in the film business, and that people say, "Oh, it's not, it's not what you know, it's who you know," and there's a lot of truth to that. But you also have to have some talent, some skill when you do get that call, right? You still have to be able to perform. So, but yeah, getting your foot in the door, that's probably one of the trickiest things to do, because there are only a few jobs that you can get without much experience. And those are the ones I mentioned earlier. But people should not be afraid to do those jobs, because it gets you where you want to be, which is on a film set,
Right. And if you put the word out there, it'll get you, where you want to get to eventually.
Hopefully. I mean, you know what? Many people, got their start in the business because somebody took a chance and took them under their wing. They'll tell you those stories. My story is no different. But so I try to be a person who is open to people who want to be involved in the film business. By encouraging them. And someone says, "Hey, would you sit down and talk with me about stunts, or, how do you think I should do this and that, I'm open to it, because I want everybody to find their way into this business if they truly want to be in it. It's a crazy business to be in, I'll tell you that. But
yeah, and not everybody's cut out for it too. So.
No, absolutely not. Not everybody's cut out for it. It's not as glamorous as many people think it is, because we see the glamour, right? We see these entertainment shows about the luxury that these people are living, but it's also a really arduous job, to come to set and wait around for hours and then deliver your lines perfectly, maybe numerous times, right, in terms of acting. And then, for the stunt personnel, waiting and waiting and waiting, and then get called on a set to do this gag and hit your mark correctly and not hurt yourself doing it, and not screw it up for the film. So it's definitely unique, I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I tip my hat off to to all stunt people, because without you guys, we wouldn't have these great movies, either like the James Bond films, or Hooper, or The Fall Guy, or even something like John Wick or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So yeah. I really do salute you guys. So Eddie, if people want to learn more about you, or if they want to connect with you, how can they do that?
So I've got I'm on a website called Film in Colorado, where sort of my my information's on there for hire. I have a YouTube channel called Action Press Stunts that has my stunt reel on it, and some films that I've produced in town myself. Being a small market, I've gotten into the avenue of filmmaking as well. So I've done some writing and directing and acting, and producing mostly short films as well. So
gotcha. And I'll have the links in the description below so people can check that out.
Yeah, perfect.
But Eddie, man, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to be on this podcast, man. I really enjoyed chatting with you. I actually learned a lot because there are just so many things. When I went into the conversation, I thought, anybody could do it, but but it's just like with anything in film, you kind of have to have the talent and the drive to do it. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to educate me on this. So before we sign off, I have to ask this of all of my guests. What's your favorite movie or TV show that you've seen recently that you just want people to know about, and they need to drop everything they're doing right now and go and watch it immediately? What would that be?
Well, I mean, as you know, being in the film business, I'm a huge film aficionado. So it's tough to pick one or two, but I will say, all time, I mean, Hooper has a place in my heart, because of what it inspired me to do. But I do truly love The Fall Guy. I've seen it a couple of times. I think it's a wonderful film, not just for the action. I really like the whole storyline, the romantic part of it as well. And then recently I saw a TV series, a mini series called Ripley, which was kind of like a remake of the Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah.
Loved it. I thought it was fantastic. There wasn't a whole bunch of necessarily action in it per se. It's kind of a slow burn that they call it. But I just thought it was shot really well. It was really well done, good production value. So those are a couple of things that I've seen recently that I really like.
So one other thing I want to ask you too. So is it true, or is it a misconception that stunt people only like action films?
No, that's not true at all. That's
okay.
Not true at all. I mean, as a person in the film business, obviously I love action films, right? Because I like to see that stuff getting done. But no, I'm a big fan of all kinds of films. In fact, last year I produced a romantic comedy, a rom-com, with my nephew, a first-time screenwriter. It's called Statistical Probabilities, and it's in the festival circuit right now, doing very well. So we produced that together, and that had zero stunts in it, So.
You hear that, folks? Stunt people can do other things, and they don't necessarily have to involve stunts.
Right.
Oh man, Eddie, I really do appreciate taking the time to be on this podcast, and I really would like to have you come back as soon as possible, because I feel like there's just so many things we can chat about. Just out of curiosity, is there like a particular genre of films that you gravitate towards? Like, are you a big horror fan, or do you like sci-fi or rom-com or documentaries, or?
I think the sort of the thriller is film. I like thriller films, drama, action, of course, action films. But I love it all. Comedies as well. Not really a huge fan of horror, although there's typically a lot of stunts in horror, and it's funny because horror films are sort of, for some reason or another, easier to make on a low budget. You've probably heard this before, but it's true. A lot of young filmmakers want to make horror films. So I get a lot of calls to coordinate horror films. There's a lot of like stabbings and these kinds of deaths. So not a huge fan of it, but it's kind of whatever comes at me, I got to tackle, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a gig, right? So you just go with it.
Yeah.
Well, that will do it for this episode of the Movie Pope. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Awesome.
Hello, and welcome back, true believers, to the Movie Pope podcast. And today, we've got another great guest on the show. We've got P. Michael Hayes II, and we are going to dive into his magical world. But before we do, remember to like, comment, subscribe. And I see some of you people are watching these videos, but you're not subscribing. I mean, what the hell, guys? I mean, seriously. Just subscribe to the channel, because we're doing something that most of these review channels aren't doing. We're interviewing people who work in the industry, and we're getting their take on how to make movies and TV shows. But other than that, let's go ahead and dive in. Michael, how are you doing on this fine, was it Easter Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking, and thanks for having me. And yeah, go subscribe. If you're listening to this, you should go subscribe to whoever you listen to. It's tough making content and putting it out there. So definitely subscribe.
Yeah, especially if we're churning this out on a weekly basis. I mean, come on, people. We're doing this at least two or three times a week. How do you have the energy? I don't know. So Mike, Mike, man, so when you sent me an email a few months ago. I think it was either a few months ago or last year, expressing interest in being on the podcast, and you were one of the first people to respond readily and just say, "Hey, yeah, I'm ready to go on whenever you're good to go." So I definitely do appreciate the enthusiasm. But let's go ahead and dive in. Michael, can you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and what drives your passion?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't remember exactly how I heard about your outreach, but I love talking shop. I love talking all things film and television and everything within the industry and what it looks like from the outside. So it just seemed like a really great opportunity to just hop in and do something I've never done. And I don't think I've ever been on a podcast before. So yeah, this will be
cool.
This will be a lot of fun. Yeah, so I'm an actor, director, writer. I'm in Austin, Texas. Yeah, and I've been working in the film industry ever since 2020. Actually, it was like a COVID pivot maneuver. I was managing a gym, and then COVID happened, and I took those couple weeks, those couple months. I was like, I always wanted to work on a set. Like as an actor, I'd be on set, and I was just like, oh, I love this. I love being on set. Every day I would show up to a film set and just, oh, this seems great. And so I just kind of wanted to dive in. Yeah. And in the film industry, during COVID, a new department was made in the production side of things. It was like a COVID department or a health and safety department. So a lot of people kind of, entered into film production and the industry that way through COVID. A lot of people like who weren't previously in the industry got in that way. And
really?
I was one of those people. Yeah.
So I just want to stop you right there, because I've interviewed a lot of people who did what you did. They either started a production company or they got into film right at the start of 2020, but they never mentioned anything about that department. Is that something that's specific to Austin or what?
Oh no, that's all over.
Okay.
So let's see. As far as I know, before COVID, if there was some type of like health and safety department, which again, I don't think there was, you would just pretty much had like a set medic. right? So you had this trained and certified medic, usually like a first responder or like a former paramedic or something like that, and they would be on set. And so after COVID, we quickly realized that, well, we can't just shut down all these film productions. We need to keep making content. We need to keep, making films for all the reasons. And so they created new departments, health and safety departments, who were essentially like COVID departments. And so these were the people that would hand out PPE or be in charge of the testing and, these big departments. I mean, as small as anywhere between half a dozen people in your health and safety department, but then you include all the the trained and skilled nurses and medical professionals that would come in and do your COVID testing like on set. So these departments became an integral part of the working film production for well over a year and a half, maybe going into 2 years.
Yeah. So so was that, so you said that's how you got your start, was going through that department?
Yeah, so I grew up an actor, like grew up in the theater, and I was always on stage. And so, I was my intro into being on a film set was as an actor. But then I quickly realized like I could be a PA, I could, be in the AD department or something like that. And so, yeah, when COVID came along, I answered this job site, and it was like, hey, are you looking for, like, it was literally a ad saying, hey, are you looking for your foot in the door of film production? Because we've got an opportunity. And so basically I was on this, this was an Austin based company that it was called Portoghese. And basically what we did is these guys who were, these two individuals who were my bosses, they started this company, and they were locations heads. So like the locations department, they were the head of the locations department, and they created this company called Portoghese. And what we would do is we'd go and we'd sanitize film sets and trailers and picture cars, and we'd have wipes, and we'd have these like big like Ghostbuster looking backpacks, and we'd like spray this disinfectant, because I mean, remember in 2020, mid 2020, like the fear of COVID was like very real, and like we were just rolling out vaccines. And so everyone was like really like, oh, I don't want to touch anything. I don't want to breathe anyone's air. So if, every day we'd be there, before anyone else, and we'd sanitize all the trailers and trucks and everything like that. And then at the end of the day, we'd do it again. So that was my introduction into working on film sets. And then I kind of like parlayed that into like being a PA, and then, moving into the locations department, and then moving into camera department.
Yeah, so walk me through that journey, because when I've spoken with people who who start off on film sets, I remember chatting with Keith Sweeney. He actually works at the craft services table for film and TV sets, and he told me that you always make connections with all these people, and the people you bring on, you kind of if someone says I want to do this or that, he kind of points them in that direction. So can you walk me through the journey of how you went from spraying down film sets with like I'm imagining like Clorox and Lysol, because that's what I did at my office for 2 years, to becoming an integral part of the film production process?
Sure. And big shout out to our craft service individuals. Big shout out to Keith, because those
I mean that guy's a Trekkie. I mean anybody, first of all, that anyone who is a Trekkie is all right by my book. All right.
Anyone that handles my food and coffee, like big shout out to them. So without going into any of the science and details, we used a like plant-based disinfectant that was also like electrostatically charged, so that the particles allegedly would stick to surfaces better and help clean it better. Yeah, like whatever, who knows?
It's 99% effective, they say.
Yeah, exactly. I was the company's first hire, so I kind of like took point. And again, like I've been on film sets before. I kind of have this like understanding of like film sets and how they work, and like film set hierarchy, like who do you talk to, who do you not talk to, who do you bother, who do you not bother, that kind of thing. Yeah. So then I worked for that company for I think like 2 years. And then 2 years into the pandemic, we've had vaccines and everything, and everyone's kind of just like, yeah, they're over it. Everyone's just over COVID. And so the company was stopped getting contracts, and production stopped hiring this company for this type of service. So then I was like, well, I've been on this film set for like 2 years. I feel like I can hop into pretty much any department that I wanted, that I had an interest in. So I had an interest in the AD department and the locations department. So let's try it. Let's go and be a PA. So then I took this job as a walkie PA on the Disney Plus show National Treasure, which was filming in Baton Rouge. And funny enough, like I went to LSU, I went to school in Baton Rouge. So this was like such a great opportunity. And like, oh yeah, I get to go kick it in my old stomping grounds. And then that turned out to be like my first real, like, you know, AD department staff job. And I was there for the whole run of the show. And it was just like a wonderful, wonderful experience.
So how do you, I guess, where do you go after that?
Yeah. So, you know, starting, if you want to do like career film production work, you know, I would say get started early. And so this was just, you know, what, 3 years ago, 3 years ago. And so like, I'm already in my 30s. I was like, my first staff job. And I was like, you know, the AD, to become an AD, which, you know, you have to be a certain special kind of sick in the head to want to be an AD, but that's kind of how my brain works. I can, you know, very organized and type A personality. It's like, yeah, I could be an AD, but you're supposed to start being an AD or being a PA in your 20s, because you have to get like 600 days of being a PA in order to like become an AD. And
Yeah.
so, you know, starting in your 30s, just not making that much money as a PA. And I was like, well, maybe the AD route isn't for me. Maybe in another life I could have done that. And so then I you know, called up my bosses who were locations managers, and I was like, hey, I'd like to transition into your department, into locations department. Sure, no problem. We're shooting in Savannah. We're shooting this last season of Fear of the Walking Dead in Savannah, Georgia. We got a spot for you. Come on out. So then I, you know, went from Baton Rouge straight on out to Savannah, Georgia, and hopped in the locations department and started filming, working on Fear of the Walking Dead.
Now, one of the things that, you know, that crops into my head whenever I hear people talk about that, you know, either being a PA or, you know, or an AD or DP is, you know, you have to have some like a certain level or certain technical knowledge of the process in order to get that job. It's kind of like, it's kind of like with any job where they kind of look at your qualifications. You have to, you know, be proficient, you know, in certain skill sets in order to qualify for that. Did that ever come up in conversation when you were kind of, you know, gunning for these jobs? Because you said you started off as an actor, really.
Yeah. And I have, you know, I've directed and shot like a bunch of music videos at this time. Like I was a musician and, you know, like a long time ago, a decade ago. So I had this like just a lot of general knowledge and general experience, like filming and on a film set. And then you, as an actor, like you kind of see how things work. And I don't know, if you pay attention and you have like an awareness of what you're doing on set, I feel like you can like kind of learn a little bit just by observing. So the job in Baton Rouge came to me from a friend of mine who is an AD. She's a wonderful AD, and she works out of New Orleans and Baton Rouge. And she already had a job. She got the call, and she goes, "Well, I got a guy in Texas who would be really great at this job, this staff position. So why don't you call him?" So really, the age-old adage of you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I mean, that is very much the case here in film production. Yes, you got to have the skills, because if somebody puts your name out there and says, "Hey, hire my boy," you know, hire Luca, and then Luca shows up and Luca doesn't know what he's doing, then, you know, that's not a good look for Luca or the person who, you know, put your name out there. So yeah, my friend Leah, she put me up for the job, and I kind of just came in there, and I knew that, right? And I was just like, well, I better crush it. So I just showed up with a lot of positivity and a lot of energy and just, you know, crushed the job.
But obviously, like she was aware that you had some technical competency in order to kind of put your name out there.
Yeah, we had previously worked, when I was with that sanitation company, that COVID company. I had worked on a film set, and I had met her in Louisiana on some Disney show that she was working on. And so we met there. She kind of saw my work ethic. She saw like, oh, this guy gets it. He could do this job. So yeah, a little bit of experience, a little bit of who you know.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, because working on a film set, I mean, obviously it's fast paced. You know, time is money, obviously, and there's just so much going on. It can feel like a sort of organized chaos. How are you able to kind of pick up on what's around you? Is that something that you kind of have to teach yourself, or does that come instinctively, or what?
I love film. and I love filmmaking, and I just, again, like as an actor sitting on set, I was just like, I love this. I love the organized chaos. I love 150 people coming together to like make this one shot. Like everyone's got a certain job. So I just have loved it from the very first moment I ever stepped on set, and I just like had this fascination with it. So yeah, maybe like you said, maybe I kind of taught myself along the way. If I did, it was kind of subconsciously. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm a pretty observant person. So just picking up everything around me. And again, if you're just passionate about it and if you care, and that was one of the things that my first AD on that show told me. He's like, he had brought me aside and he's like, I like you because you care. Like it's very obvious that you care. So yes, time is money, and it is a fast-paced moving thing, and you do have your job, and you got to get your job done, and preferably get it done quickly.
Yeah.
But if you bring a level of like integrity and a level of care, like I care about the production, I care about the people on the production, I care about like my team and the team around them. So yeah, just bring a level of consideration and care to it, and I feel like that shows, and people will pick up on that.
So what was the most difficult thing for you to pick up on set?
The most difficult thing. So I was the walkie PA, right? So there's usually on an AD team, you have like your first team PA, you have your background PA, you have a couple extra PAs, and then you have a walkie PA. You have one PA whose job is not only to be a part of the AD team and be a PA, but he's kind of in charge, he or she is kind of in charge of all of the production walkie-talkies. And so that was a absolute nightmare. I mean, we're talking, 200 walkies that the production has rented out, and I'm, trying to keep track of them on these spreadsheets, and I got grips and stuff losing their walkies or losing their antennas. And so you just constantly, I think, having previously never done that, it was the like accounting of the walkie-talkies and just like getting them all back and making sure they're all charged. That was the thing that I had to learn the most, right? Because everything else kind of came a little bit naturally, just knowing how sets work, and again, like that social hierarchy of a set, like I kind of had a good feel for that. So it really was the actual like dealing with the walkie-talkies. I'm kind of like a social person, and your walkie PA is literally going out and talking to pretty much every individual of every single department. And so like, that's really good for like a social butterfly. You can conversate with anyone, but getting them all back and just like, having that organizational skills was something I had to learn and pick up on the fly.
Yeah, and I was going to say, because with walkie-talkies, you kind of think, oh, it's just a walkie-talkie, it's no big deal. But when you take into consideration just how busy the set is and how many people are involved, you begin to appreciate just how organized you need to be in order to make sure everything's running smoothly. Because I mean, because again, I mean, you're like you said, you're renting out these walkie-talkies, and if one goes missing, I mean, God help the person who lost it.
Yeah, I mean these are $200-$300 walkie-talkies, and then there's at least double. Say we had 200 walkie-talkies valued at $200 each, and then we have double that amount of batteries, and you have all these chargers. So it's just a lot of physical equipment to like manage and get a hold of. So God forbid we leave the studios and we go out on location. Now I'm just like lugging these these things around, which is that's all part of the day in the life of film production. I think that's one of the things that I love the most about it is like, here's an army of 200 people or 150 people, and we can literally like pick up a whole house and move it, and pick up a whole set and change the room and flip it around. And I think that's part of the beauty and magic of filmmaking, is that, with all these people, you can literally accomplish anything and make a room look a certain way and flip it and turn it and get the reverse angle. It's that's one of the cooler things about working on film.
Yeah, it's kind of like a military operation if you think about it. You gotta go in and kind of
Yeah.
be efficient about all of that.
Just with a lot more lazy grips. Yeah.
Exactly. So this leads me to another question. So, what department have you not worked in yet that you feel would be beneficial to for you to work in to kind of level up your game?
None. No.
In case anybody's watching.
Yeah, right. No, I haven't worked in the grip department. I haven't worked in the electrical department, but I honestly have no desire to do either. I mean, I went ahead and tried the departments that I thought, one, I had a natural ability to do and a general interest in, right? So the AD department, I loved it. I loved every second of being in the AD department. If I would have gotten started a decade earlier, I would be a full-blown AD, absolutely. Then I transitioned to the locations department. I get locations, it's logistics, it's practicality. It's like, okay, here's this, 5-acre lot. Like, where are we parking? Where are the bathrooms? Where's the catering? Like, I get that. My brain works that way. So locations department was super fun. And then I also tipped my toes into the camera department, which was a lot of fun. As an artist, as an actor, and like I said, director, like I do have this vision of like how I see things and how I would want to shoot things. So I was like, well, I might as well try the camera department. Again, loved the camera department. Yeah, I was beginning my film production career in a time that was really disadvantageous to do so. Aside from getting in the door with the COVID thing, again, I'm in my mid 30s, and then all these strikes happened over the last 2 years, right? So like I was in line for a pretty good camera gig, and then the strikes happened. And so, it's just a full-blown career in film production hasn't quite panned out for me yet. And I don't know if it ever will, which is just as fine too,
Gotcha. I mean, and that's the thing too, because people who go into the film industry, they think, I'm going to make it big within the next few years, but they don't realize just how grueling it is to kind of work your way to the top.
Grueling's a good word. If you don't have any, like family attachments or prior responsibilities, and you're willing to work 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 16-hour days, then do it. And if you have a passion for it, then do it. It's a lot of fun. Like, I love everything about working on a film set except the hours. I'm a firm believer in like a nice, healthy work-life balance. And man, you're 12 hours a day on your feet, 14 hours a day on your feet. It's just like, yes, I care about this. Yes, I'm passionate about this, but it's also like a lot of uncertainty. When am I coming in tomorrow? I have no idea. How long will I be there? I have no idea. You're kind of at the beck and call of the production. And so that is the drawback of working in film,
So I want to step back a little bit, because you said that you started off in acting, and particularly theater acting. Can you maybe talk about how you got started in theater acting?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I grew up in the church, and I was a pretty involved kid in the church, and so the church would oftentimes put on like skits and plays and like in our youth groups and stuff like that. So I was always just like big, I was always just like a big personality, and I would like, kind of lead these things. And then, once I got the opportunity in high school, I was like, oh yeah, well, I'm definitely taking theater. My best friend growing up, his dad was very heavily involved in the local community theater. So I was always going to plays. My mom always took me to these like touring plays. So like the theater was always in my life, and it was always something I did. And then that transitioned to like, I was always at the movie theater. I've worked at movie theaters before. I've just like always had this like thing with film and theater, and it was always a thing. So high school comes around, I'm in theater, I'm taking 4 years of theater, I'm just involving myself in the arts. And then I minored in theater briefly in college. I was in a couple stage productions in college. And yeah, so it's just this thing that was like always with me. Like I was always on stage, I was always in the theater. And let's see, 2018, I'm living here in Austin, and I get the lead role in this graduate student thesis film here at the University of Texas. And it was this action film, and I was like, well, I've never done an action film. And I just like had the best time, and it was such a fun experience. And here at the University of Texas, they have such a great film program, and they have access to such amazing resources and such amazing equipment. And so the film popped off, and it was really well done, and I got to like do this fight scene. So in 2018, I just kind of reminded myself, I was like, oh yeah, you like acting, like why don't you do this a little bit more seriously. Got myself into an acting class, and I've just kind of been doubling down on it ever since.
But you weren't working as an actor professionally, right?
I don't think I've ever crossed the line into like being a working professional actor. I don't think I've got there yet. Yeah.
Gotcha. Is that something that you still want to do, or are you primarily focused on the film?
Yeah. So
aspect?
earlier I said I was a musician, right? And so I have at one point in my life, in a chapter of my life, I was a touring musician, professional musician, had no other job, no other income besides music. And that was a lot of fun. And that was a dream and a goal in and of itself. I learned a lot through that process, and I've learned that I don't want to rely solely on my art to be my only income. So would I like to be a professional working actor? Yeah, that would be great. I am truly in it for the craft. Like, I love the craft of acting. I'm fascinated by it. Like, I'm in class now. I'm reading books now. Like, I'm auditioning now. So if that comes my way, great. I just know that I'm never going to put acting down. It's going to be something that I do for the rest of my life. So if I become this working professional actor, great. If not, that's cool too. I've got a nice job now, a nice steady job that I'm passionate about and that I care about in a field that I care about. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered my question.
Oh no, that's fine because the thing is that there are a lot of individuals out there who are passionate about their craft and they put everything they can into it, but they're also kind of, I mean, what's the right word? I guess they're kind of held back by the real world because they understand that sometimes it may not be the best option economically. I remember during the actors strike, they did some interviews with some actors who were members of SAG, and they were saying, yeah, after paying X amount of dollars for dues for membership and all that stuff, I barely have enough to cover groceries and paying the rent and all that stuff. So so on the one hand, it's like it'd be cool to do this professionally, but at the same time, you kind of have to remember that there are actual costs in the real world where it may not be viable for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a risky business relying on your art as your only income. And what I learned, and this is only my experience, so I don't want to speak for anyone else, but it kind of put pressure on my art in a weird way that I didn't like. I think I am able to grow so steadily as an actor now because I'm not putting pressure on it. Like, I have this great acting coach here in Austin, and like I'm auditioning, and I'm a part of these like great projects here because like I, I don't know, I just like I don't have to rely on the art as my income. So if I didn't have a job, I'd be like, oh, I got to get this commercial. Oh, I have to book this film. Oh, I have to book this part. And it puts a unnecessary pressure onto your art, onto your craft.
Right, because it just creates more unnecessary stress.
Right.
Yeah.
And that creates like a weird relationship between the artist and their art. Like if you were a painter and you only made money off of selling your paintings, that would create a stress in your life. Like, oh, I have to sell this painting. Or not only I have to sell this painting, I have to paint something good enough to make X amount of money. So again, it creates a weird relationship and it creates a weird amount of pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to ask, so you're working, your passion is acting, and then you got your foot in the door in the film industry. Have you made any individual films or shorts or anything?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. That's such a good question. I have at the let's see, I don't know, man, maybe like October, November of 2020. This director I had previously worked with, he called me, Robert Smith. We worked together on this really cool mockumentary, and he calls me one day. He's like, "Hey, man, I'm going to enter this film race. These like timed film competitions where you heard of like the 24-hour film festival, 48-hour
Yeah,
film
yeah.
festival. So
Yeah.
this was a 100-hour film race. So you got like 4 days or 5 days or whatever that math is. 4 days. So he goes, I want to work with you on this thing. I was like, yeah, great. Like, let's do it. And he goes, no, I want you to direct it. And I go, oh, interesting. So this previous director I had acted for is now calling me to like be a director. And he's like, I really think you could do this. Like, I after working with you on set, I think you should do this. And so I kind of was like, okay, like I like to say yes to things when opportunities come my way, when the universe gives you something, I kind of like to say yes to it. So me and my friend Tay Cannon, who's another actor and at the time was the lead singer in the band that I was in, we kind of put our heads together and we wrote this script. and then come December 2020, the film race happens, and we execute the film, we shoot it. And I bring on a friend of mine, Kylie, as my co-director, and she shot the thing, and Robert helped shoot the thing, and called in a couple friends. And so we wrote this short, and we shot this short, and we put it out. I think it's 15 minutes long. It's called Super Therapy, and it was such a phenomenal experience. Just like writing, producing, and directing this short, and it's out there, and I'm just like so proud of it. And it's not perfect, it's not like world changing, but it's like it's ours, and it's our story, and it's super fun, and we get to play these characters that we just like had a lot of fun with. And we all got to showcase a little bit of our talents in a lot of different ways. And so yes, I have produced and written and directed a short, and it's out there in the world. It's called Super Therapy. And if you're listening to this, go check it out. It's 15 minutes. It's a lot of fun, and it's probably not what you think it is.
So what was it like, actually, writing and directing a film? Because I'm assuming this is something you've never done before, right?
So in high school, as a junior and senior, my theater teacher would invite us to write one-act plays.
Okay.
So in junior year of high school and senior year of high school, I wrote one-act play each year, and then we put them on. So it's something I had experience with 15 years prior. And I'm a high school kid, what the hell do I know? And I'm sure they were corny, and I'm sure they're bad, and I'm just really glad that no one has a recording of those. So I had a little bit of experience in it. Me and my buddy Tay, we would work out in the garage, and we kind of just we'd spit ideas out together. And eventually, after a couple of weeks of that, we had this pretty tight script. We invited my friend Ronaldo, who went to LSU with me. He's a rapper and an artist, and just this incredible Renaissance man. He's got 4 degrees from 3 different universities, this theater background. I think he's got a degree in Shakespeare or something. It's wild. The guy's absurdly talented. So we wrote him in. He's the main character of the film. And the experience was just so gratifying and so empowering. I mean, to take something, to write it, and then also the experience was extremely collaborative. I mean, I didn't do any part of this by myself. Tay helped write it, Reno helped bring it to life. I invited my friend Kylie to help come shoot the thing and co-direct it with me, because I was like, you have an incredible vision, I've seen your music videos, I've seen your work, please come help with this. So the experience altogether was nothing short of incredible and life-changing, and it made me realize oh, it's really possible to write something, shoot it, create it, and now you have this, you own this. This is our thing now, and now we have it's something to call your own in this world of all of this media and all of this content. You have your own, and I'm sure I'm sure you feel the same way, where you're just you've created something, and now you have this thing, and it's just there's just no greater feeling than to have something and to put it out there and to be proud of it.
So what did you learn from Kylie, as a co-director?
Oh my gosh. She's brilliant. She's got such a great vision and such a great mastery of her craft. And she's a extraordinary editor. And she's just she has seen things from an angle that I wouldn't see, and vice versa. I would hope to think. And the way she shoots things with different focus techniques and camera techniques and editing techniques. She's just really helped kind of capture a side of the story that I wouldn't have been there without her.
So was there anything new that you learned in making that movie, or I guess anything that was different from from what you had already learned, working in theater and working on film sets?
Yeah, directing is really executing a vision, and I've done a good bit of that with music videos. I've got, at least half a dozen music videos under my belt. So learning something with this narrative, like a piece of narrative storytelling, I think I learned a lot about coverage. I learned a lot about continuity. I learned a lot about making sure the important beats. I'd say that learning and identifying what your important beats are in the script, but also in your vision, in the way you see it in your head. Know what those important beats are, and make sure you've got those a number of different ways. so that in the editing room you can say, I thought I wanted it to look like this, but we have this other shot and I think it just works a little bit better, you know? So like I learned, I'd say the most, identifying your beats, your important moments of the story you're trying to tell, and make sure you have enough of that. Because, you know, when we're doing this on a shoestring budget and we're doing this under time constraints, and so some things just got mixed, right? Or they got missed, excuse me. Some things just got missed. And we ended up telling the story anyway, and beautifully. And, you know, I think a part of creating something is taking these imperfect parts that you have and like making them work, and like kind of accepting that imperfection, and part of the beauty of it all. But yeah, I'd say that, like, identify your important beats and make sure you got those down.
Gotcha. So you live in Austin, Texas, and when you hear Austin, you think of a lot of things. You think of South by Southwest. You think of the University of Texas of Austin. You think of like the sort of hipster kind of, you know, paradise, you know, scenario. But you never really think of of a film scene over there. Well, not as big of an indie film scene like you would see in, say, Portland or New York or LA, or even, you know, even places like Boston or in the Carolinas. What's the film scene like over there?
Yeah, so it is really under the radar, the scene here. I think it all stems from, there's a couple big anchor points that happen here in Austin that really that the scene grows around. So one would be the university, right? I mean, they have this storied film and television program here at the university. I've done numerous student films and graduate films, and yeah, so I think it all starts there at the university. You know, McConaughey was here. He's like a adjunct professor here now. But then Robert Rodriguez has a studio here, Troublemaker Studios. And him and Tarantino have worked together on like Death Proof here in Austin. I mean, a lot of things. And Robert just put out like a film with Ben Affleck, I think like last year or 2 years ago. It was pretty good. So, you know, they've got these like really low key things. Linklater shoots here all the time. So we've got these like low key, like big fish in this small pond. But then I think, you know, in the last 5 years, lots of studios are coming here. I mean, we've built, they have built these big film studios out in Bastrop, which is like 30 minutes east of here. Anyway, it's like 30 minutes away. I mean, big film studios are, a lot of money has been poured into Texas in the last 5 years about opening new film studios. So the scene here is low key. It is growing. It is, you know, independent, but I think there's a lot of big things ahead for the film scene here in Austin.
So has it been growing over the past 20 years or so, would you say?
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, with the involvement of like Linklater and Robert Rodriguez, I think that it has been slowly growing. I mean, when did they shoot? Oh my gosh, it's escaping me right now. Oh well, yeah. Back in the 80s, and back in the 80s, they shot this like iconic film here that I can't think of the name of it. It was McConaughey's big break, but yeah. So I think it's slowly been growing. Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean that's a fascinating thing, because you never think that cities like Austin would be the hub of film activity, even though they kind of, you know, from the surface they kind of look like they're ripe for it.
Austin's a cool place, man. I mean, Austin has a lot to offer. Central Texas has a lot to offer, and then like geographically, like visually, there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of space here. There's a lot of like land out here to do things with. Austin's an amazing city. It's like a small, big city. I mean, like geographically, it's not very big. There are a lot of people here, but it also has a lot. It's a big entertainment like stopping off point. I mean, yes, you got the university, but then we have like the Formula One track. Now we have the MLS soccer team here, and like big touring music acts come through here all the time. I mean, like Austin's a happening place, and I've loved being here for the last 8 years.
Yeah, and I already mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. You've also got South by Southwest, which is
South by Southwest, Austin Film Festival.
Yep.
Yeah.
Austin City Limits also. I mean,
Austin City Limits. Yeah.
I grew up watching that show religiously, and I was like, you know what? I would love to produce a show like that one day.
Those tapings are great. Yeah.
I mean, and also think about how many great acts comes through. It's like the biggest one for me was when they got Robert Plant on there, and I'm like, holy shit, they got the guy from Led Zeppelin on there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I want to go ahead and just wrap it up. But
Okay.
but Michael, if people want to learn more about your work, if they want to connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is just follow me on Instagram. I'm not like the most active Instagram person, but my Instagram handle is PM Hayes II. That stands for Patrick Michael Hayes II. So PMHAYESII. Yeah, that's where you can like find my IMDb page. You can find a link to my short there. Yeah, and just keep up with me with all the acting stuff that I got going on.
Excellent, excellent. So before we wrap up, I have to ask my guests all these questions. The same question for every episode we do. What's your favorite movie or TV show that you've seen recently that you want to give a shout out to? Could be either or.
Favorite movie or TV show that I've watched recently. I watched okay, so like every year that when the Oscars come around, I try to just like crush all of the Oscars and like watch all the Oscar nominated films, particularly like the ones that are nominated for the best actor and best actresses. So let's see. I really resonated with May December with Natalie Portman and oh my gosh, I'm doing so bad on names today. Oh well. May December was really great, really wonderful performances from the two leading ladies there. What was it? I mean, obviously, of course, Oppenheimer was a phenomenal film, and Killian did great. I recently watched Rustin with Coleman Domingo. I had this special soft place in my heart for Coleman because, I don't know if you know this, he was a big character in the Walking Dead series, the Fear of the Walking Dead series. And so, getting to work with him, day in and day out on the show and the production side of things, and then getting to see this meteoric rise of his well-deserved acting accolades is just like really, really like heartwarming. I mean, this guy is just the nicest guy on set, and then he's such an incredibly talented actor, and then to watch him like really get recognized for these like just outstanding acting performances that he's doing lately. So Rustin, if you haven't watched Rustin, it's on Netflix, and it's well worth the watch, and Coleman is well deserving of that Academy Award nom.
Coleman, we love you.
We love you, Coleman. Shout out Coleman Domingo. Luca, thanks so much for having me, man.
Absolutely, man. And thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this episode. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one. Ciao, bella. And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast, and Happy New Year to everybody. Hope all y'all are taking care of yourselves. Hopefully sticking to your resolutions, because I sure as hell am trying my best. I'll probably stop around mid-February and say I did it, but that's just me. But before we dive in, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos with everybody that you know. And just to give you a heads up, starting around March, we will be introducing a new feature called the 60-second review, where Lee will be reviewing a movie in less than a minute. So be sure to check that out once it arrives. But today we have another great guest. We've got Alex Patten here, and we're going to have a great chat today. Alex, how are you doing, my man?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Just hanging in there. 2024, is barely started, but you kind of have to adjust yourself. It's like that at the beginning of every new year. You know what I mean? So Alex, why don't you go ahead and just start? Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you currently do at the moment.
Okay. Well, I am from Winston-Salem, born and raised. I got into acting actually this past summer. I was a semi-pro baseball player for about 2 years. I still play here and there, but honestly, I really got into acting. I enjoy this part of what God's created. I like to do it as much as I can. So I was, anytime I see a opportunity to be an extra anywhere, that is the first thing I do. That is the first thing I did. So just get my foot in the door. But honestly, as I want to start to grow, actually get lead roles, star in some things. So honestly, the sky's the limit for me.
So I mean, that's really really fascinating. So you actually started off playing baseball. What I mean, did the idea of acting ever cross your mind before then, or was it more of a recent thing?
Well, sort of when I was a little kid, I always liked movies, always liked TV shows, I always saw up and coming actors that of course I'm like, hey, I always thought that said as a joke, hey, if my baseball career doesn't go well, I definitely want to be an actor.
Hmm.
And I got the opportunity. Actually, what got me into all this was there was an ad on Instagram. I was on Instagram one day, and there was an ad from 99 saying, "Who wants to be an extra in the Outer Banks?" Which is probably the greatest show on the East Coast today. As I'm sure Stuart Casting can say the same thing. But I honestly, and that it just opened up this whole entire avenue. Then next thing you know, I start joining Facebook groups that post ads. Hey, we need an extra this day. We need a lead role this day. We audition for this and audition for that. And of course, I was there at School of the Arts a few weeks ago trying to get in some roles for their spring film for their spring film. So I'm just waiting to hear back on that. And for the record, I mean, I've loved doing this. I was an extra in God's Not Dead um 5, which is should be coming out sometime this year. My goal is to be in some sports movies and well sports TV shows, and of course the main goal is to be in the Outer Banks, which I continue to submit my information to, but it hasn't of course I haven't gotten casted for it yet, but of course I'm still going to try until I do. But
Hmm.
so I've definitely enjoyed this. Has definitely been a lot of fun. I mean, this has definitely been the highlight of 2023 for me, and it will continue to be through 2024, 2025, and beyond. So, honest and truly, I've enjoyed doing this.
So that's pretty fascinating. So you start from playing baseball, and then you decide to become an extra in all these shows and movies. So just to make sure, you never studied acting, or you never had any acting classes before
Nope.
then.
Actually, I was in act. I took theater arts from I think from my freshman to junior year, but other than that, that was it.
Okay, gotcha. So when you're on these sets, and and you're taking direction, how I mean, do you like develop any backstory for the character, or do you try to get into the character's head? What's your methodology when it comes to that?
Well, honestly, it's whatever the director wants me to do. Of course, they have. Well, of course, we're just there to fill a role, which which they already have it planned out for us what we're going to do, and they just need us to execute the plan. And honestly, and precision is very key on a movie, on any kind of set. You got to be able to do exactly what they say, or else the movie is not, or the film is not going to turn out the way you want it. So you got to really pay attention. So I think the goal in for any extra is to listen. That is the biggest thing that you need to do. Listen and do what the director or associate director wants you to do. So I have um, de- definitely made sure that, of course, when every time I come on set, I mean, when I'm actually on the set, I make sure I listen to everything that the director, associate director wants me to do, and make sure I execute it the way they want me to do it.
So how do you prepare in that case?
I prepare usually, honest and truly, you prepare. Honestly, it's mainly about the extra roles that I have been in. They've been some non-speaking roles. Sometimes, a few times I've been in some speaking roles, but majority of the time I'm just there filling a gap, filling a hole. So honest and truly, you got to make sure that you dress the part. So honestly, they usually give out a list of attire, the way um the way they want you to dress, and definitely keep um some multiple options so that you have more to choose from. So you want to be over prepared than less prepared. I've learned that from being on a couple films. So you definitely bring, when they said bring in the right, these certain kinds of attire, make sure you bring multiple options, because it's always good to be over prepared than less prepared.
Can you give an example of something like that? Because I've heard people talk about that, but they never really clarified. So can you maybe give us an example or an anecdote about what that entails?
Sure. Well, when I was on God's Not Dead, I only brought one attire. And honestly, I felt like, and they sort of worked with it, but I mean, they had people bring suitcases full of clothes to make sure that they have exactly what the costume, um, uh, director and associate director, because, and honest and truly, you got to really make sure, because they don't want you don't the last thing that you want to do is drive all the way out to a set and be sent home because you don't have what they need. Honestly, I mean, that hurts probably you more than it hurts them, because I mean, you don't get to experience that experience. So honestly, people were bringing suitcases full of clothes, and I only had, the first day I was on God's Not Dead, I only had one set of clothes, and I definitely I was lucky I was there. They decided to keep me, and then at the same time, the next time I try to dress and get more, bring more attires, and I still wasn't prepared enough, because I they wanted me to bring, wanted to be business attire, and my business attire and their business attire was a little bit different. So honestly, make sure that you research what business attire means or casual attire means, because you want to be ahead of the game. So honestly, so if a casting director sees you, they could say, hey, we could use you for multiple roles because of the attire that you have. And they or they may need you, they remember you, and the attire you brought, the energy you brought. They may um they may say, hey, I want this guy in a future project. He did a great job for us then, and then i want I want to use him again. So honestly, always be prepared. That is the biggest thing I should tell an extra. Be over prepared. Not just be prepared, be over prepared.
So so do they tell you specifically what what they want, like like one shirt, a necktie, suit jacket,
Hmm.
or is it more like they just or was it more like business casual, and then you kind of interpret what they mean from there?
Yeah, sometimes it's both. Sometimes they usually want you to bring like no brand shirts that has a brand like Nike, Adidas across your. I mean, they usually want solid colors, um, and they want you to. I mean, they want you to fit the scene that they're doing. Like I was for God's Not Dead 5, first scene I was in, I was at a political rally. And you'll see all this when God's Not Dead 5 comes out. And next scene I was there for 2 days. I was there we were at a business office, everyone was business casual, and we were just walking around while they were meeting about some business plan. And then honestly, I there was a scene where I was in with Dean Cain. That was a lot of fun. If you don't know who Dean Cain is, you definitely need to do your research. So I was there acting like we just came out from partying, and we acted like we were watching the results of his political campaign. So, but basically, you want to make sure you bring enough energy in the right set of attire to make sure that they want, when they ask you to come, that it's not much about like, hey, I get to be in a movie. Listen, you get to, yes, you get to be in a movie, but you got to do exactly what they tell you to do. So they already have a plan. It's your job to do the plan. So
So, so I want to circle back a bit because you mentioned before that when you first started out, you went into social media. Can you walk me through the process of what it was like to go from you know go from trying to find these parts to actually getting the part and then being on the set? Can you walk me through that?
yeah, usually, um, majority of what these productions do is they post ads on Facebook groups. That's mainly that's mainly what they do, and of course, there's other avenues, but I found all the things that I've been in on Facebook groups, and usually it says, "Hey, we're looking for this." Usually they give an age range, ethnicity, race, and sometimes they, "Hey, we just need somebody," and they give a list of description. And they just go, hey, to we need this person this day. Are you fully committed with no other obligations um that day or in that time? So honestly, and they said, if you're interested, email us a headshot, which headshot description height, they usually, the description is um your height, weight, hair color, um, let's see, pants length, shirt length. Um, they want to basically see, so when you get on set, they have an idea of what they can have you do. And if it's a good fit, hey, they'll email you back and say, hey, we need you this day, and some 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 roles are paid and some roles are unpaid. So you sort of want to, do you want to get paid for the, I mean, which everyone likes to get paid. Everyone likes to get paid. But starting out, I took some non-paying roles just to get my foot in the door. So honestly, so when there was some paying roles, I already had my resume built up, so um, I can do paid roles. And of course, my goal is, of course, you got to start somewhere. So I was an extra, and I still do extra work, but my goal eventually is to g- climb up the ladder, go up the ladder, featured role, lead role, then star and some things. So honestly, sky's the limit for me.
So did you pick up an agent, or did you talk to anybody about representation? Because I know sometimes that's one of the things that people recommend that you get in order to get your foot in the door, or were you just doing it all by yourself?
What 99, the agency that I joined, they have you pay a monthly subscription, and they have it all set up. They have you send, like, when you're about to send your comp card, which that's what they call it, to casting directors. They have, um let's see, they have it all sort of organized. So all you have to do is put their email in the email box and just press send. And I pay a monthly subscription for that. And also their organization cast me for um they take your name and they put it in a database, and they try to find castings for you as well. But mainly it has been me, just going on Facebook groups and seeing what productions need, and just literally just taking my information, or taking the email that they tell you to send it to, just put in my 99 profile and just press send. And if I get booked or casted, I get casted. If I don't, I don't. But honestly, it's been more of me um finding the productions myself. But they still find you productions also. So it's sort of a two-way street.
Okay, so it's not necessarily guaranteed. It's just they kind of help facilitate the casting process, right?
Yes, nothing is guaranteed. And of course, you know this. Nothing is guaranteed in production ever.
So another thing I want to ask you too, have you gone out and tried to like network with filmmakers directly to see if they can kind of cast you if they if they need it, or do you mainly just stick to the agency as your main source?
Actually, I honestly, I'm a sponge. So honestly, I've actually gone up when I was in God's Not Dead. I literally got the information of the associate director, his contact information, as well as one of the guys behind the scenes. So honestly, one of the guys behind the scenes said he does a lot of Hallmark movies, Lifetime movies, as well as, I mean, he said he's always on the go doing something. I'm like, hey, can I get your information? I just tell him I'm getting my foot in the door, and my goal is to move up the ladder. Can you help me? And they said, yeah. I mean, some casting directors are willing to give their information, and some are not. So honest and truly, I was very blessed that they were able to give that information to me. And I can use that in the future. I can just decide to, hey, you remember me? I was this person in this production. Can you, if you ever need any kind of an extra role or a lead role, I'm trying to get from my information. I'm just trying to build my resume, go up the ladder. Can you help me out? And of course, I mean, it's all about who you know, and I mean, that's what you're going to figure out. Well, I figured out in baseball, the more you're around the the sport, or how the process, the more big names you're going to know. So the more you're around these group of people, the longer you're here, the more big names you're going to know. So it's sort of the same thing with life. The more you're around it, like, let's say, um I'll go back to baseball. Well, I have played with and against some multi-year MLB vets, as well as trained with some as well. And that's just from me being in baseball for this amount of time. And same thing is, I mean, hey, I met Dean Kane when I was on the set of Guys Not Dead 5. So, I mean, you never know who you're going to run across. Every person is there for a reason. Every person on the set is there for a reason. So honestly, I am there the entire time. I'm there listening as well as I'm getting everybody's contact information as I can. So honestly, because I mean I love I have really found a passion doing this stuff. So I have really tried to find out how I can grow myself and build my resume. So it's basically it's who you know and all the people, and it's always just being kind, being a people person. Because honestly, no one wants to grouch, no one wants to be this person that is a pain. Because that is, I mean, if you're a pain to the casting directors or to the people on the set, that's going to be the last time that they see of you. But honestly, make sure that you listen to what they want and also get to know them a little bit. And so honestly, if they have a future project, hey, I'm like, hey, I like this guy's personality. I like this guy. I liked how he treated me as well as the casting members. And I may need this project. I mean, you get something out of the blue. Hey, I was this casting director in this production. Can you uh can you send me your information? I may have a role for you. You never know who you're going to run across. So always be a people person, be kind, always be on your best behavior. I think etiquette and behavior is another key thing on being in productions.
So, are you mainly working in projects in the Winston-Salem area, or have you had to travel a bit?
I've traveled, the farthest I've traveled was to South Carolina, which it was right on the border with Charlotte and South Carolina to be on God's Not Dead 5. But honestly, they they're filming the Outer Banks in Charleston, South Carolina right now. And
Yeah.
so my goal, I mean, I literally tell them, I mean, hey, this is the reason I got into this. So honestly, I don't mind driving to Charleston to be in this. So honestly, the majority of the stuff that I have been in has been in North Carolina. But honestly, it's as I start to build up my resume more and more, and my bank account starts to get more and more, I definitely want to travel and go as far as I can.
So, so you did mention earlier that you want to move up from being an extra to having more lead roles. Have you or has anybody told you to consider taking acting classes to kind of, build up your repertoire? Because I know because I've heard some people mention that in the past.
I've come across the idea, but I mean, that's something to consider. I mean, if it helps me gain an advantage, to be in acting classes and to eventually, which I mean, honestly, you could be taking a class at, I mean, I'm very blessed to have School of the Arts here in Winston-Salem,
Mm-hmm.
but there's people that are taking doing acting classes on the other side of town that could get you nowhere. I mean, it depends on, I mean, make sure that you do an acting class with someone with a reputation that will cast people to big name productions. So honestly, I definitely want to consider that more. So honestly, as I start to go along, I may want to do that.
So, so hypothetically, if someone from Outer Banks came up to you and said, "Hey, Alex, we want to cast you in in a recurring role," um, we'll probably just have you appear on this number of episodes for this season. Um, would you still consider taking acting courses, or would you just like dive right in and kind of just like I guess wing it for lack of a better word?
When
I know that's not the best way to phrase it, but
No,
but you kind of get where I'm getting at here. Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're getting from. I would say that, I mean, if Outer Banks came a calling and said, "Hey, we need you this day," I'd definitely do it. And honestly, if it would give me an advantage, if I would gain something from doing acting classes, I definitely would do it. So I think honestly and truly, I think honestly only if it would benefit me more if for for me to do acting classes. So also I do sing as well. I sort of sing in my praise band at church, and I've done some small gigs as well. And so I highly consider doing voice lessons as well. So I would honestly I this is a whole avenue I've been in for less than a year, and I've gotten my foot in the door in some really cool places. So it's you never know what you're going to come across and what your ultimate goal or what you'll end up doing. So I definitely just always be kind, be prepared, and listen and follow directions. So those are the big four things I should say when you're just starting out.
Right. I mean that's pretty good advice, and that's actually advice that you hear, from a lot of guests, whether it's working in front of the camera or behind the camera. Just because, like you said earlier, nobody wants to work with a difficult person. So so obviously, the more easier you are to work with, the more they're likely to just say, "Hey, this guy's definitely willing to take directions. He's willing to learn. Let's go ahead and see what we can do with him." Um,
Absolutely.
so let me ask you this: as you're in Winston Salem, I mean, you're actually the second guest I've had on the show who's from that area. Can you can you talk about what the film scene is like over there? Because I don't imagine there's much going on there, but at the same time, you know, I, I don't live in the area, so I don't really know what is what's the film scene like in Winston, and do you think there's like enough going on to where it could potentially become like a pretty big scene like it is in Charlotte or in Wilmington?
Of course, we got the North Carolina Film Festival here in Winston.
Hmm.
And of course, you got School of the Arts. You got two big art organizations here in Winston Salem. Actually, the first production I was in, it was in a downtown movie. No, excuse me, it was a downtown restaurant, a Mexican restaurant. The production was called O and Zero. It was about um, a military members with PTSD, ex-military with PTSD having to adapt to today's society.
Hmm.
And basically, I think there is a group that I'm definitely going to, as soon as I get done with this, I definitely want to research this more. Um, it's called the Actors Group. The guy that runs it was if you remember the movie, remember the Titans. He was Ray, sort of the racist guy that eventually gets kicked off the team.
Hmm.
He owns a group called the Actors Group, which I'm thinking about joining as well. And of course, he's been in other movies as well, but that's been the main one that people know him from.
And that's in Winston.
Yes, that is in Winston.
Okay. So, because I live here in Charlotte, and I know, I know of a few productions that they filmed. In fact, back in the '90s, they filmed Shallow Hal in South Park, at that big house, and then I remember, I think it was like '98 or '99, they filmed the TV movie Shake, Rattle, and Roll in My Old Neighborhood.
Okay.
So obviously Charlotte does have some clout when it comes to being a production house. Do you? Have you seen or have you experienced any major productions in the Winston Greensboro area?
Um, not like having Adam Sandler or Will Ferrell come and film a production here in Winston-Salem. No, that something big that wouldn't happen. If that was the case, the papers and TV would be all over it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I definitely nothing big has happened like that. But again, it could happen. I mean, Winston Salem. I mean, we're here the Triad. We're here. I mean, an hour or two. You're from the mountains, and then about two and a half. You're smack dab in the middle of the state. 2 hours away from the beach, and then 2 hours away from the mountains. So honestly, you get the best of both worlds when you come here. So there's definitely a lot of big opportunities to film things, but no, I have not come across some big films filmed right here in Winston Salem. But I mean, anything can happen. I mean, it could be out of the blue as well. So they find a place that they like to do productions, and then um they next thing you know, you'll hear about it on a Facebook group or somebody, and then they will give you um they'll give you the information, or you'll find out the information. If it works out, it works out. Honestly, you're never guaranteed anything in this business, and it's sort of the same way with baseball. You're never guaranteed. I mean, you may be on a roster one day, but then the next thing you're not. So you always got to be you got to treat it like it's your last production or it's your last game. You always never take anything for granted.
So, I actually do want to circle back to you starting off at baseball. Can you tell me a little bit about what you were doing before acting when you were playing baseball? Were you playing in the minor leagues, or were you just playing for like a club or what?
Well, I played baseball in college, and then I played in a semi-pro league that travels around the country, playing different indie ball teams. Like players, like we could play the High Point Rockers one day or the Gastonia Honey Hunters. Um, but at the end of the day, let's see. So as a baseball player, I was always on the go. I was always traveling. Like you're at a game one day, next thing you know, you're in the car traveling to a game here. So you always got to be flexible with your schedule, and you always got to be. I mean, you never take anything for granted. So enjoy. I think one of the things one of my coaches told me is always enjoy the moment. So you never know when it's going to be your last, or you never know what's going to happen. So always enjoy where you are in the present time. So honestly, make the most of every situation. So that was my goal as a baseball player, and that's definitely going to be my goal as an actor.
So I definitely want to go ahead and wrap this up. But before we go, if people want to reach out to you or people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
Well, they can follow me on Instagram. It's Patten Pride or Patten_Pride 1. And also I have a motivational quote page, Patten_Pride 2, as well as they can find me on Facebook at Alex Patten. And it's spelled Patten. I have to correct people all the time, not Patton, like the
No,
general.
like General. Yeah, I was gonna say like General Patton.
Yeah.
So one last thing I wanted to ask you. Well, I guess second to last thing. The actors strike ended late last year, and and there's been a lot of hoo-ha about whether it's done the actors any good because they've lost a lot of income from the time they haven't been able to work. Do you think there's any benefit, or do you see yourself joining SAG at any point, or do you feel that's just more of a hindrance than a benefit?
I mean, honestly, I've sort of been doing some non-union things, so I don't have to worry about union having to worry about this situation, that situation. I always want to be able to have a job, so I try not to put myself on that kind of island. But honest and truly, Outer Banks is part of the SAG organization, as well as Cobra Kai. Actually, I'm pretty sure Cobra Kai is part of the union as well. God's Not Dead, thankfully, was not.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to film it, no problem. But I know that's where a lot of you're going to find more big names in the SAG union. But I would definitely always keep yourself open. Always keep yourself open. If you want to put yourself in that on that island, go right ahead. I mean, but honestly, my advice was, for me, I mean, you can always do union films or you can always do union films without being a part of the actual union. But if you want to always, I mean, never limit yourself. That's a better way of saying this. Never limit yourself on what you can do. You always want to have your options completely open.
Gotcha. So you really, so it sounds like you really wouldn't be interested in joining it unless you felt compelled to, kind of like with the whole acting school thing, right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Gotcha. Because you definitely don't want to find yourself in a situation where in a few years down the road, where if there's another strike, you may not be able to, get any work, because you've got to follow the rules of the union.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. So Alex, I can't thank you enough for coming onto the podcast and for being one of the first guests of 2024. I'm really, really happy that you came on. But before we sign off, obviously I like to ask this of all my guests. Is there a particular movie or TV show that you've seen recently that you think is the best thing ever that you want to talk about?
American Underdog, the story of Kurt Warner.
Gotcha.
Well, honest and true.
Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, I was a big Kurt Warner fan. Knowing his story, it sounds a lot like my story about a guy that came from nothing that ended up being an NFL Hall of Famer. And just to watch the struggle that he went to get to where he is, I can relate a lot to that. Then of course, love the Outer Banks. I mean, it definitely paints our coast real well on what exactly the scenery is like and what goes on. So honest and truly, again, sky's the limit. The next thing, I mean, one day I'd love to be alongside Adam Sandler doing a production. That'd be awesome. But and again, always enjoy the moment. Always never take anything for granted.
Excellent. Well, Alex, I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast, and I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this episode. Remember, if you're enjoying the content, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we are not going to stop producing more of these videos. We'll be doing more interviews and more reviews as the year progresses, so please remember to check us out and spread the word. We're now on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, and we're working to get set up on other channels. But thank you so much all for watching, and we'll catch you on the flip side.